Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, it occurred to me today that tech dominates almost every aspect of my life. Just about every website, app tracks almost my every movement, and my watch will track my heart rate and my exercise and my steps. And if I order a pizza, I can go on my app and it will tell me every stage of the pizza baking process. But with COVID-19, I could have a test at an airport, I could order one online, or even at a local testing centre. But none of the results in those three tests will appear on my medical record or appear in a giant holistic view across a giant sea of data. So, in my simple mind, to try and obtain a greater global view of the pandemic, I'm sure we could greater put artificial intelligence and machine learning to better use if we just united all that data. But yes, I know I'm an idealistic geek, and I know every single country, and in America and in the US, every single state has a completely different set of legislation and regulation, etc. So it's much more complicated than that. So I invited Apixio CEO Darren Schulte back onto the show, who I last spoke to, I think, back in 2016. When we chatted back then, it was about the data-driven revolution in healthcare. So it just feels like a great time to reconnect, especially considering the ways that COVID-19 has completely upended the healthcare industry. But enough rambling from me. I'll get off my soapbox and get Darren Schulte back onto the podcast right now. So a massive warm welcome back to the show. We last spoke 4 years ago. For anyone that missed that conversation, can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Darren Schulte. I'm the CEO of Apixio. We're a company based in the San Francisco Bay Area, and we apply artificial intelligence techniques to read, make sense, and derive insights from clinical records, medical records about what doctors and folks operating in hospitals will record about your care. Take that data along with information generated through other healthcare activities to create a better picture of individuals' health, and from that, how we can improve the quality and care of individuals and help their providers along the way.
And when we did last speak 4 years ago, we chatted about the data-driven revolution in healthcare. So, I mean, apart from the global pandemic, what has changed since we last spoke?
Well, at least here in the United States, we've made real strides, both legislators and the Health and Human Services, an arm of the executive branch of the U.S. government, to create a framework by which information can be shared between electronic medical record systems and other databases, which is really the foundation for leveraging insights from healthcare data, where even though over the last 15 years or so, we've had much more adoption of electronic records here in the U.S. These data sit in silos in hospitals and in clinics, and without an ability to provide one data base, if you will, it's really hard to learn from that information to power better healthcare. So I'm very optimistic now that we'll get to a point in which this data will be liberated. And as such, we can really make use of it in ways that will change, I think, truly the way that healthcare is delivered and healthcare is practiced.
And there really does seem to be a desire for it now, because, of course, from there, we've now got COVID-19. And I think it's almost highlighted a lot in a lot of ways how we have no way when tracking and tracing of who's got what data, who's had it, who hasn't had it, who doesn't have it. And it seems like such a basic thing that would be easy to do, but it's kind of shown that it really isn't. But I'm curious, have you seen COVID-19 upend the healthcare industry as a whole?
Yeah, I think that COVID, with respect to, a lot of things in healthcare, certainly we can touch on some of those today. With respect to what we just talked about, I think it's quite frankly a shame that we don't have more of a centralized database, if you will, to learn in real time what it is that necessarily can cause more severe COVID. What are the risk factors? What potential therapies truly are having an impact? How you can trace and track folks, especially those that might test positive without symptoms, but they're potentially super spreaders, if you will. And so right now we're learning more slowly. Those insights are coming in a way that isn't as timely as we need it, because some of these issues around the easy ways in which one could mine information. But still, like in New York City, Columbia, and NYU don't easily share data. So hard in the midst of that craziness in April and May to really get on top of how can we really affect in real time the care for these individuals and determine who's truly at high risk and who ought to be quarantined, as a result.
And what kind of role do you think, let's say, artificial intelligence could play in automatically identifying individuals who are at most at risk from COVID-19 because of underlying conditions? Because it feels like AI would be the perfect fit for that.
It would be. I think that the ways, so if you had 1 million records of 1 million individuals' care, if you will, certainly we don't have enough people to read that and then derive some insights. That would be nearly impossible. Machines trained to read a medical record, the text, using artificial intelligence techniques, can then gather insights and make correlations between, certain aspects of disease and treatments and the like. So it's perfectly positioned now with the advent of cheap, powerful computing with these techniques to really harness for this type of data inquiry. And so, unfortunately, we weren't able to make the best use of it during this particular pandemic. But I'm hopeful that, unfortunately, in the next one, because there will be a next one at some point in our future, that we can harness these techniques to make real-time inquiry and get on top of the disease certainly sooner than we've been able to do currently.
And before you came on today, I was also reading about technology that can read patients' records and extract life-saving information, and all that exists because of AI. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, so I think it's truly interesting that the studies that we have now about medical care and what to do is based on a limited set of information from the limited set of individuals that we can gather data on in a more of a handcrafted way, by manually recording information from a medical record, somebody scribing that. And so limited sets of individuals means limited insights, means, maybe information that not as powerful, not as robust. What I mean about these techniques, literally it's quite exciting that a computer algorithm can be trained to understand that this particular sentence, this particular note, relates to these types of aspects of one's care. Even though it's very hard to do, physicians tend to write in a myriad of different ways in a language that doesn't reflect any language on earth, just doctorese. But with enough information that can train these models, they can be quite good at being able to indicate that this particular patient suffering from these diseases has taken these therapies, perhaps it hasn't had the effect that it should have had. And then what you do is you gather that data for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions in hours or days rather than weeks, months, or years, as it occurs today with researchers doing this by hand. And so it's quite illuminating, and I really believe that we're going to be in much better shape to be able to change for the better the ways in which we can practice. But think of it this way: artificial intelligence has been used to read information on the internet to help provide recommendations for your shopping habits, recommendations for what you listen to, recommendations for how you navigate life. So this has been done in other areas and other industries, and only recently has this been brought to healthcare for a variety of reasons. So this is not a new and novel technique. It's just one that's now being exposed, in terms of healthcare data and healthcare data analysis.
Now, you did mention this a few moments ago, especially around the US, with completely different legislation in each state, and with data scattered across smaller lakes that we can't access versus just one giant ocean that we can all access. Where do we begin to solve a problem like that?
So there's different regulations that govern the practice of medicine in each state in the United States. And certainly there are some challenges there, although parenthetically, with the greater utilization of virtual care or telehealth, I think some of that state-by-state regulations will be more unified at the federal level. With respect to data security and privacy, there was a law passed in 1996, HIPAA for short, that relates to healthcare information portability, privacy, that really governs across the country the way in which healthcare data is handled, utilized, and shared. And so that really can govern a unified nationwide strategy, which makes sense as you seek care. If you do in different states, you still want to ensure that there's one fundamental framework that governs the proper use of your medical information. Under HIPAA, the medical information can be utilized for payment, for treatment, to improve the quality of your care. And individuals, when they seek care at the office or at the hospital, will indicate that they are, in all the paperwork they're meant to sign, that they are okay with their data being utilized for those purposes. And so with that in mind, with the responsible use of information, certainly we can create, if you will, one data lake, but do so in a responsible way. And ultimately, it is the individual's information. So getting their approval, if you will, through HIPAA as this governing regulation in the United States, is important. And we'll see further at the federal level, further work to be done to update HIPAA for the 21st century. But that really helps, unlike the way that we regulate the actual practice of medicine, which, as you've indicated, is a state-by-state regulatory environment.
And in terms of data analytics and AI, I'm curious, what kind of trends are you seeing right now? And have they changed in the last 6 months?
Well, I think they're changing. It seems like on a daily basis. So in general, I like to say things in healthcare change on a much slower time frame than, say, other industries. I think with the advent of COVID, the distancing, the types of precautions we're taking, the understandable concern of individuals to not go to their doctor's office or the hospital because of the chance of contracting COVID, we've seen a great resurgence, if you will, in the use of telehealth, so that you can have a visit with your physician without actually being in the same room. And that over the last 6 months has truly blossomed in the United States and around the world. So now we're rethinking about all manner of different healthcare interactions that can be undertaken utilizing telehealth, not just using it as it has been for when you have a cold or an infection or your child is sick, but to manage chronic diseases, have specialty visits, and that's really helping to redefine the way care is delivered, which is quite exciting. And if you think about it, much more convenient than the model we have now, that you have to take half your day to go visit the physician's office or whatnot. So I think that technology focused upon making that virtual visit higher quality, more efficient, trying to replicate that in-person visit is quite exciting, and where a lot of work I see is being done over the last 6 months or so, again, given what we had to do in our fight against COVID.
And I think it was about 9 months ago. It was news feeds and timelines were full of analysts and futurists predicting the next big thing in tech and this great new decade that we're entering into. We all know how that happened, so no pressure here. So, what does the future of healthcare look like, in your opinion? Are we going through a big transformational process? Do you think?
Oh, yeah. I think healthcare is going to be delivered ultimately where you are, not where the physician is. It's not about visiting a big hospital to get, your everything done. It is delivering care that is specific to you. I call it the N of one, or the true personalization. And it's also being delivered, where you are, wherever you are, and it's being done through with the help of devices that provide the physician or others caring for you the information that in a virtual manner can help both to diagnose, treat, and deliver the treatments. So I can imagine wearing something like a Fitbit with your smartphone and maybe a patch on your shoulder. You can both have the determination of what you might be suffering from, an algorithmic approach to determining what works best in you specifically because of your genome, your proteome, your particular lifestyle, and then you're delivering the medication directed in a virtual manner through pretty non-invasive means. Maybe a patch on your shoulder. For example, diabetics walk around with an insulin pump, but maybe some other delivery device for the medication. I can see providing a hospital level care, but in the home, or perhaps you visit your Four Seasons hotel to have a great consumer individual experience of having a virtual hospital care, as opposed to going to the hospital and worrying about contracting disease while in the hospital. And so it's really a true personalized approach in which the healthcare is where you are, again, not where the practitioner happens to be. And that's where I think we really are going. And the technology both helps to enable that virtual care delivery, diagnosis, monitoring, as well as really crafting a true recipe, if you will, tailored to you. The therapy is tailored to your specifics, your body, your specific circumstances, as opposed to treating you based on population level guidelines. And that's quite exciting.
And it must be an incredibly exciting space to be in at the moment. There is so much change going on, and technology is making a big impact. But what is your primary focus at Apixio for the next 2 years? Is there anything that you can share with us about the road ahead?
Yeah, so for us, it's really the centerpiece of providing this kind of care of the future that I described is really an accurate reflection of your care and your care over time, as we can glean from the data. And an accurate picture that then can be used not only for you, but to glean the new approaches to practicing medicine. That starts with gathering millions and millions of individuals' care profile, if you will. And with that, you can then run simulations, trials, and understand how to best deliver their care. So here at Apixio, it's refining and further enabling us to have that accurate picture of data about you, no matter where that data lives, the form in which it resides. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of faxes, there's still a lot of paper, different electronic medical record systems. Your data is still widely distributed in largely unstructured form. So text, again, the language that reflects your data is unlike any other language spoken on earth. We want to make sure that we are truly accurate to assemble, derive the right insights, reflect what it is that's ailing you and the treatments and its effectiveness, and then aggregate that across many millions of lives, and then be the analytic brain, if you will, or maybe the spinal cord, if you will, that is then powering this new type of care that I just described to you. So that is quite exciting. And I think in a couple of years' time, we could be the basis for providing that virtual care, providing that personalized care, and then understanding how to change the practice of medicine on the other end. A lot of what we do is based on observation, anecdote, what physicians remember from their training in medical school. But what if we can learn truly from 1 million lives, not tens of thousands in a study, but 1 million, truly how to change the way, say, you treat heart failure. And we learn from real world data how that is. But the basis of it is this accurate reflection of each person's care over time, and then assemble that across a large population. So we're almost there. It takes an AI to be, high performing at scale, very accurate in its work, and that's what we're working over the next couple of years, and it's quite exciting, and we're just trying to go as hard as we can to make that a reality.
Well, it sounds like it is going to be an exciting couple of years ahead. And for anyone that would like to continue and follow you on that journey, what's the best way of following Apixio online and also contacting your team if somebody from the medical community is listening too?
Yeah, I appreciate it. Well, certainly you can visit us at apixio.com. That's apixio.com. Certainly we have a presence on social media as well. And we'd love for those of you who are technologists who would like to make an impact in healthcare, which is sorely needed for not just the US, but around the world, to look us up. And data scientists or engineers, we are interested in those, and those are healthcare experts who can come together and try and change for the better the way medicine is practiced both here and around the world.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast today. I think we need to promise each other we're not going to leave it another 4 years before you come back on, especially with so much happening in the near future. But I love everything that you're doing here and how you're using technology to transform not only the healthcare industry, but it's how we treat people as well. And just a big thank you for taking the time to come on here and share that with me again today. Thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And we really appreciate it. Thank you.
I love Darren's vision here that AI would be able to automatically identify individuals who are most at risk from COVID-19 because of underlying conditions, and resources could then be focused on those who need it most. And the technology to read patient records and extract life-saving information all exists because of artificial intelligence. However, it is currently scattered across smaller lakes that nobody can access, when the alternative, of course, would be having one big ocean that we can all access. So a big thank you to Darren for coming back on and not only discussing the future of healthcare and data analytics and AI, but also helping me make sense of a few things out there. But if we have anyone else in the tech community, medical community, or wherever you are listening to this podcast, if I'm way off the mark on anything, call me out on it, please. Email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. I'd love to get your insights on this show too, because that's what it's all about. And my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. You'll find all links to my social channels on there. Let me know your thoughts. But tomorrow will be the turn of a completely different industry and the role that technology plays in it. So hopefully you'll join me again there. But until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.